What is biblical Israel / the Jews? There seems to be a lot of confusion about that when you see people talking about what's going on in the Middle East right now. So for a brief, quick history synopsis of the Jewish people, you had Abraham. God called him to, by faith, to go out and to a land, and he would make of him a great nation. He left. He had two sons originally, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael was the firstborn from the bondwoman Hagar. That's where the Arab nation comes from. And then you had the promised seed, Isaac, born, and he became the father of the Jewish nation. So they started settling in the promised land, which is Canaan, which some people call Palestine today. They were there until a famine started, and then they left the famine and went to Egypt because Joseph was there. They should have never left. They should have trusted God to provide for them where they were, but they left. That was a test. They failed. They went to Egypt, and then they became enslaved there. And for 400 years, they were in bondage in Egypt. Then God at Passover, Nisan 14th in Egypt, they left Egypt. They started making their way back to Canaan, where they had left, the promised land. And 40 years later, they eventually had enough faith to fight through the giants of Canaan, and they got the land back. They settled there for centuries until the Babylonian captivity, and they were dispersed amongst the nations. Well, Ezekiel tells us about the dry bones prophecy, which is Israel, that there's the bones scattered in this valley, that's Israel amongst the nations, and that one day the bones would come back and form a skeleton. That was 1918, the Balfour Declaration, when Israel was given the land. And then the sinew would come on these bones and skin. That was 1948, when Israel became a country. And then the last thing that would happen would breath would be breathed into Israel, and that's going to happen at the end of the tribulation. Israel as a nation is going to repent, and that's going to trigger the second coming. So that is Israel. Israel and the Jews are the same. God promised the promised land, Canaan, what some people call Palestine, to Israel. So that is the brief history of Israel. That was their land. It is their land. And the issue surrounding all of that is that by Abraham and Sarah disobeyed God, didn't wait for Isaac, and tried to do it through some other means. And that's a picture of a Christian trying to serve God in the flesh and not serve God by faith. Just tell me what you think about that real quick.